Live from Orlando, Florida, you're now listening to the OZone Podcast, the voice of Orlando Magic fans. Join us every week for a unique fan perspective on all of the latest Magic news and updates. The show starts now.
What's up, Magic fans? Welcome back to another episode of the OZone Podcast, brought to you by DraftKings and part of the Basketball Podcast Network. We're your hosts, Al, myself, Anthony. Today is Friday, January 13th, and we're recording this post Jonathan Isaac, post some games won from our West Coast trip. So definitely a lot of exciting things to go over today. Al, what's going on?
What's going on, man? Can't believe it's already Friday, but here we are.
Here we are, man. We got some news. So before we deep dive into our topics for today, we want to announce some changes that are going to happen moving forward. Some things that we're really excited about. Some things that have been a long time coming. Al and I, we've had this discussion maybe 1,000,009 times, and we kept going back and forth, and we just never pulled the trigger. And we've decided, it's time. And Al, do you want to share what that is?
Yeah, so it's bittersweet news. Actually, it's really exciting, actually. But it is a sentimental part of it too. So it basically comes down to the name of the podcast. So nothing will change as to the day-to-day. The podcast will still be recorded on Thursday nights. It will still drop every Friday. But going forward, the new name is going to be the Orlando Magic HQ podcast.
Hey.
As Anthony mentioned, we've talked about this quite a bit over the past, really like 2 years. We're like, hey, do we make everything in our brand match? As you guys know, we have the website, orlandomagichq.com, where we got our articles being posted by our writers. We have a videographer and photographer that goes to the games and is doing that work for us. We now have the Twitter spaces being done after every game and also after every breaking news that happens. And then we have the podcast. So the podcast was the only thing that kind of felt like a lonely child with a different name. We had a different Twitter handle for it since we started it back in 2019. And again, for the longest time, we've been like, wait, how do we make it all match? How do we make it all one brand so we don't have to be, the OZone Podcast and Orlando Magic HQ? So again, we talked about it over the past few weeks a little more in depth, and we decided to finally pull the trigger. It is a random episode. Today will be our 141st episode that we're recording with this name. It will actually be our final. If everything goes as planned, next week, our first Orlando Magic HQ podcast episode will be released. So bittersweet news, again, for those of us that have been listening since day one, have been supporting us since day one. But again, the day-to-day will not change. We're still going to be your host. Everything will be the same. Just some graphic changes. Our Twitter handle will change, but that's about it. Any words for our audience, Ant?
Yeah. So new name, same podcast. For the OG listeners that you've been listening for a long time, if you remember early on in the beginning, the OZone Podcast. Well, let me take it a step further behind. So originally Orlando Magic HQ was just an Instagram page. That's all it was, where I was just posting really news and updates and rumors and a whole bunch of crazy stuff. Even before then, it was Orlando Magic Rumors. So definitely a lot of changes has happened. And then we started the podcast, but the podcast had nothing to do with that entity, with that social media page. And, as the podcast grew, there was a lot of changes that happened in between. And long story short, it just ended up just being Al and I. During that time period, as you can imagine, the day-to-day was tough doing it solo. So I had asked Al to join me, and we were able to really grow Orlando Magic HQ from just being a social media page to now being, a multi-platform Orlando Magic coverage team, a team of 7 that we have now. And as you said before, from websites to articles to getting credentials to videographers to all types of different mediums of Magic coverage, we've got to a point where it just makes sense to get the name change. It was like the one thing that was kind of odd that didn't match. Even when we got our credentials, it was was confusing because it was the OZone Podcast / Orlando Magic HQ. Like, it was just too much going on that we really didn't like, and we felt like it's right. It's time, and we're excited. So major shout out to our Patreon members that really helped in giving the feedback, from Preston to Yachty to Dylan, Mr. Michael Martin. I appreciate your feedback, because your feedback really mattered to us and was really the deciding factor in us being able to move forward.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it wasn't easy. We asked our wives, we asked our Patreon members. So we really wanted to take people's feedback, and some of them did say
we were asking a lot of people so that we wouldn't change. Like, somebody stop us from making this decision, and nobody.
And trust me, till the last minute, we had our moments. We're like, are we really doing this? Are we really making all these changes? Because behind the scenes, too, guys, it's a ton of work, right? So everything changes, from graphics to the YouTube. Everything is different. So it took a lot of work, but we're excited to say it's finally happening. And again, don't be worried about the day-to-day. Again, the podcast quality, all that's going to be the same. Nothing's going to be changing. If anything, heads up, it's going to be more content to you guys. So last week we talked about Stanley joining our team and doing the Twitter Spaces, which, by the way, big shout out to him, doing an amazing work in hosting those Twitter Spaces after every game. Love the fan engagement, the fact that they're able to chip in with their thoughts and opinions on the team and what's happening. We're actually going to be including that audio in our podcast feed going forward. That was also something that for us was important. We didn't want to confuse you guys. This is an OZone podcast, but yet we're listening to some Twitter Spaces that are being done and being published on that feed. So again, it all made sense. Orlando Magic HQ now is the entity, is the holding company, let's call it, and then everything will feed through it from now on. So going forward, again, even more content. So you have our weekly podcast episodes, plus every single Twitter Space that gets done. We're going to be posting it here in our feed as well going forward. So if you're a Magic fan and you're craving that Magic content, get ready. That is coming.
Yeah, man. For everyone that asks, can you guys do more episodes? Can you do 2 a week, 3 a week? Can you do daily podcasts? We've tried, like we've thought about doing it, but life-wise, it just didn't allow for us to do that. So this will allow for there to be more content that people can listen to on the way to work, on the way home, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of times that we have, emotions after games. We want to hear, we want to talk about it. We don't want that experience to end. And this is a way for that experience to be able to continue. So really excited about that. We're actually planning on having Stanley Swanson join our next episode. That way the people that aren't familiar with Stanley or who don't have Twitter and have no idea what we're talking about, get a chance to be able to get to know him a little bit and kind of hear, all the great work that we're doing in that space. Yes, sir.
So let's kick it off. The last episode of the OZone Podcast. Let's do
this. Yeah. It's going to be a good one. So, on that note, enough with the housekeeping. Let's get into it. So this past week, we continue our West Coast road trip where we took on the Golden State Warriors, a team that did not have Klay Thompson, did not have Stephen Curry, but still had Jordan Poole. They still had Draymond Green, and it was still in Golden State. Want to talk a little bit about that game?
Yeah, man. So every time you play the Warriors, defending NBA champs, you got to take that to the next level. Whether they have Klay, Steph, whoever they have, they're still going to be a competitive team. And the Magic did a great job going to Golden State, starting off the West Coast road trip with a huge win, 115-101. Big shout out to Paolo Banchero, man. Paolo did a great job in that game, 25 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 block, actually 1 steal in that one, shot the ball well. And then, of course, Franz, man. Franz has been on a tear lately, which we'll talk about plenty of him today. But 24 points for him as well, really picking it up in the fourth quarter and securing that win for us. Really impressive win just because we came out of a tough loss that Thursday before we were headed out to the road trip. So a great way to get started. So really impressive. Cannot say enough things about that young duo, Paolo and Franz.
Yeah, and absolutely whooping on the Golden State Warriors. Every game this season has been something to put your hat on and be excited about, just because, man, we heard the trash that Draymond Green was talking about. in the shop with LeBron James and whatnot. So to be able to go out there and, put a whooping on them is feel good, because that's the type of stuff that we need when we look on paper and we're thinking, all right, if the play-in is serious, if we're really trying to win games, Golden State Warriors, when we're looking at the matchup, and this is even before knowing, who's on the roster, who we're playing, we could look at it and be like, all right, maybe that's not the game that we're gonna win. We look at teams that we should beat, that we don't beat. I feel like getting a big win against Golden State, regardless of who's playing, that balances that out. So that's exciting. And then we fall down, unfortunately, against a massive loss against the Sacramento Kings, 136-111. This was a game where the Kings just were playing really, really good basketball. This is not the same Sacramento Kings from past, where it felt like they were the laughing stock of the NBA. Not saying that we weren't there too, but they just weren't playing good basketball, and they haven't for a while. And this year, what Mike Brown has been able to do with that team has been absolutely insane. The Domantas Sabonis has been playing really, really good basketball. They just have a really good team. They have a really good hype about them right now. And unfortunately, against the Kings, they hit 23 3-pointers against us, which is a new franchise record for them. It always seems like it happens against the Orlando Magic. It's like the Harrison Barnes ends up going off to, we haven't heard of Harrison Barnes in so damn long, and it seems like these are the type of teams, these are the type of players that they want to go off against the Magic, and rightfully so. We did not play good basketball. It was a tough beating from beginning to end, and was not a fun game to watch. Beating the Golden State Warriors in Golden State, and then coming out and getting destroyed by Sacramento really had a lot of the fan base kind of, it's a shot to the gut, and it's unfortunate. But that's the way that the NBA is, man. There's going to be games that you win. There's going to be games that you lose, but you don't want to lose in that fashion. 136-111 is a tough pill to swallow.
For sure. Like you said, they seem to just, whatever they threw up there from 3-point range, it just went in. Doesn't matter whether they're wide open, they were well defended. It was just, everything was going in. 50% for the Kings in that game from 3-point range. It's not going to cut it. You can't stop and beat a team that's shooting it that well. But yeah, thankfully, a guy that with the Kings always kills us, Trey Lyles off the bench, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 3 3-pointers for him. I don't get that guy, man. That guy does not play well against anyone else in the league, but it's one of those magic killers. So whenever we face him, I'm like, watch him go off. Didn't quite go off, but still 14 points in 16 minutes. That's a pretty good game for him. I just don't get it, how those random dudes that just kill the Magic, and they do it every single time. I don't know how that happens.
It happens. It's weird, and it happens. There's always like that one guy on the team that you don't expect to go off that ends up going off, and it gets frustrating, man, because it's like, how do you let that happen? But you lose against Sacramento. What's important is, and some of the things I feel like the Magic have done a good job of lately, is being able to bounce back. You lose against Sacramento, but on to the next one. You end up facing the Portland Trailblazers that had, Damian Lillard, Central Florida kid, and Anthony Simons. We were able to get a win, 109-106, and this was a game that we feel like the Magic were just dominating, early on, and to a point where we were winning by like 19 points. The Blazers, they were struggling from the field. They shot 17% from the 3-point line. They were not playing good basketball. But somehow towards the end of the game, we still allow for that 19-point lead to kind of slip. And it ended up being a really, really close game at the end. I feel like this was a good game to watch. When we talk about how late these games were, if you're staying up until midnight, 12:30 to watch your team get their ass beat by Sacramento, you're not happy about that, right? But going toe to toe against the Blazers, against a player in Damian Lillard, and it's midnight, and you're hyped about it, and the fact that the Magic were able to pull off a win against Portland in Portland was dope, because massive win. I will say, however, that last possession stressed me out so bad. If there's one thing that I pray and hope that the Magic end up addressing, is you would think that with as many big men that we have on this team, there are one advantage that the Magic have when you talk about what we're able to do in our size and what the other announcers they're saying about us, is that we're a big basketball team. You got 6'10" passing the ball to another 6'10", passing the ball to another 6'10" that's driving down the lane and throwing an alley-oop to another player that's 6'10". But I feel like we can't rebound the damn basketball, and that's the one thing that drives me insane. We give up too many second chance points, and then the last play of the game where they were able to have 3 opportunities to tie the game up was scary because they had a lot of really, really good looks.
Yeah, I mean, that was a wild game. So to your point, we jumped off to like, I think, a 19-point lead in the first half. Some way, somehow we lost that. It was a tied game at halftime. Then we pulled the lead back up in the third quarter to 11 or 12. And then in the fourth quarter, we went ahead and we almost lost the lead. We thankfully held on to it and ended up winning the game. But yeah, man, that last possession, actually the last 2 possessions. Oh my goodness. So that foul on Gary Harris against Lillard.
That was wild.
And not only, it's not only the fact they called that foul, which by the way, wasn't a foul, but then the 2-minute report comes out the next day and validates that the ref made the right call. I'm like,
I don't know. Like, I don't know how much more straight Gary Harris's arms could be in that possession. It was insane. And the fact that the 2-minute report ended up coming out, it makes me feel good, at least that Coach Mose, didn't just waste a coach's challenge on another play that he could have used on this play. You really, like, foresight is, you really don't know, but the fact that he got a challenge to go through was also exciting. But it's crazy because I've watched the play over and over and over. I'm like, I don't see it. No, I don't see it.
No, they're talking about some lower body contact. I'm like, there's nothing there, nothing whatsoever. But it is what it is. Point is, right after that, they come back, and like you said, they had 3 chances. Not only that, but 2 of those 3-point shots that they took were literally wide open. So we got lucky they missed those. But to your point, we got to do a better job slapping the ball away. Just do something to get the ball out of the possession of the team that's trying to tie the game, because it happens every time with the Magic. I feel like when the game matters most, we cannot grab that rebound to secure the win. We got to get better at that. But a huge win, especially after losing the night before in Sacramento. This was a 3rd game in 4 nights on the West Coast. Not an easy challenge at all. They pulled it off. And by the way, props to us. I think last week we both predicted 2-1 record. We both said we can beat Golden State and we can beat one of the Kings or the Blazers, and we got that right. So really good start to the road trip. We have a huge game tonight against the Jazz. I know they've been playing really well. But if we can pull off the win today, I think if we can manage to win 3 games out of 5 in this road trip, that is a huge win for the Magic.
Yeah, and how can we move forward without highlighting how Franz Wagner was in that game? Fourth quarter, Franz dropped 15 points by himself. Fourth quarter, like, the dude is just nasty. When you really talk about, like, who's the first option between Franz and Paolo, like, you really don't know, like, who is the first option. They both handle the offense so well. Franz is just, man, at 6'10", the way that he's able to drive down the lane and find a way to be able to get to the basket effectively is insane. We'll talk a little bit about some comments that we heard later on. But when you take a look at kind of how that draft ended up being, what a steal by the Orlando Magic. And Jeff Weltman, John Hammond, they definitely deserve the kudos because they saw things that we didn't see, whether that was from the investment system that they used, that they were able to analyze college players that was proprietary, that no other team was able to use, or their scouting team, whatever it is, the partnership that they have with Michigan, whatever it is, kudos to them because, man, Franz had a really good rookie season, a really freaking good rookie season. And the fact that he's following up the rookie season with an incredible sophomore season, I find it hard to believe that, his name wasn't at least mentioned with, the All-Star voting. I wasn't expecting for him to get in at all, but the fact that his name wasn't mentioned more, I find it crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what else can you say about Franz, man? Not only in the road trip, but throughout the whole season. He started a little bit slow shooting the 3-point ball. I know we early on were kind of concerned that his 3-point shooting was not there, but we also knew he played Eurobasket. He was tired from
Yep.
that. He would take a little while to kind of catch up. But man, look at his last 5 games. So starting with Washington, December 30th, 28 points. He followed up with Memphis with 22, Golden State 24, Sacramento 16, 29 against the Blazers. So he's averaging approximately 23, 24 points a night, shooting it well over 40% from 3-point range and well over 50% from field goal range. It's unreal that this kid is doing what he's doing. One of the best scoring players in the NBA right now in the fourth quarter. And not only that, one of the best finishing players around the basket in the NBA at his height. We expect that. But my goodness, to your point, when we drafted him last year, I know many of us were like, who, why are we doing this? Looking back, thank God we did that, because unfortunately for Jalen Suggs, he has not quite panned out just yet. Hopefully he'll be healthy and he'll catch up. But right now, it's truly, thankfully, it's kind of like I see it in my eyes as we picked Franz 5th and Suggs 8th, and Suggs is kind of a disappointment, the one that we kind of like, why did we do that? But man, Franz has been absolutely ridiculous lately. Just how mature he is. This kid never seems rattled. He never seems out of place. He knows what he's doing. Just completely impressed. And we'll talk plenty about him here later on in the podcast, but incredible job against the Blazers in the fourth quarter. Just truly just saying, give me the ball and I'm going to win us this game.
Yeah, really good basketball. I'm excited to see what these next few games look like as we end our West Coast road trip. The Magic are now 11-6 in their last 17 games. So obviously an impressive bounce back after the way the season started. Let me ask you, when it comes to the new starting lineup that we have now, Markelle Fultz, Gary Harris, Wagner, Banchero, Wendell, what are your thoughts on that lineup? And if you remember earlier before the season started, this was the lineup I wanted. I wanted Gary Harris in that in that 2-guard position. What are your thoughts on that group so far?
So first of all, I think what it's telling me is the Magic are actually trying to win. Why do I say that? To your point, Gary Harris being the shooting guard, he's a vet. He's a shooter, a guy that can defend. Joining a very young lineup, add some good balance in there. We knew we needed a vet in the starting lineup to kind of balance things off, but also some shooting. And the Magic are saying, hey, we're trying to win. We're trying to really make this run at the play-in tournament, or so it seems. And they're doing it by playing this starting lineup. That's what that tells me. In a perfect world, being 100% honest, I would love for Harris to be replaced eventually by Jalen Suggs if he stays healthy, if he shows that he's finally hitting some shots. But right now, at this moment, it is the perfect starting lineup for the Orlando Magic, just because, again, it is a really good balance, good leadership, good, again, a vet presence in there. I really like what I've seen out of it. I think it's a lineup that is telling our fan base we're trying to win games. And that's what I like the most about it. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Gary Harris hasn't been balling out of the gym. Like, he hasn't had fantastic games. But I do believe that he brings a level of balance. When you look at the team, you have a traditional lineup with Markelle as your true point guard, Gary Harris as your true shooting guard, Wagner at that 3 spot, followed by Banchero and Carter. And I think that having a vet with that group is really, really important. This lineup was pretty much allowed in a sense because of Bobo being out with health and protocol. We saw a variation of this early on in the season with Terrence Ross. And in that position, you want to be able to have a shooter. And I think that, regardless of how well or not well Gary Harris has been playing, he's still a threat out there. You have to be able to respect him and respect his shooting. So I personally like this lineup. I agree with what you're saying. It does show to me that the Magic are trying to win. They're trying to go out there and compete, and that's exactly the message that we want to be able to send. Really, the biggest difference maker has been Markelle Fultz. The Magic are now 11-10 with Markelle in the starting lineup, and previously we were 5-16 without him. How good has Markelle Fultz been for the Orlando Magic?
I mean, my goodness. Really quickly before we talk about Markelle, quick point on Gary Harris. He's only played 14 games. So let's be realistic. He'll need a few more games to kind of get his legs under him, start hitting those shots that we expect him to hit. I think he'll get there. But really quickly on Markelle, my goodness. I mean, this kid has been balling lately. Same thing, has only played 21 games right now. He kind of slowed down for a little while there, struggling with some games. But the last 3, 16 points, 16 points, 18 points. But the best part, shooting, my goodness, around 65% from the field. I mean, you heard that right. Markelle Fultz, 65% from the field in the last 3 games. And most of those are mid-range shots, contested mid-range shots. What I really like, if you ask me, is the fact that he's not forcing the three-pointers. He's not trying to prove to people, hey, I can hit them or I can take them. If he's open, he's taking them. And unfortunately, he hasn't been making them lately. But he's not like shooting air balls. He's not hitting the backboard. Like, he's shooting quality threes. Not going in right now, but everything else is going in for him. The best part, the ball distribution. How well his playmaking for the team and setting everyone else to success. 7 assists, 5 assists, 7 assists his last 3 games. Again, it's showing that this guy has the ball in his hands. Something good will happen. Either he's going to make a basket or get somebody else in a good position to score. So, I mean, I cannot say enough things about Markelle Fultz except the word leadership comes to mind. This guy's a leader. Whether it is vocal or not, I'm not sure. I'm not in the locker room. But you can see it on the court. He's always trying to control the players' emotions. If there's a weird call that doesn't go our way, he's the first one to go to the player and try to calm them down. If a big play happens, he's the first one out there celebrating on the court with the players. So I cannot say enough good things about Markelle, except that we waited so long to watch this Markelle Fultz on the court doing what he is doing. I just hope for health, because if this continues, remember that tweet that he tweeted back in the offseason about 4th seed?
Yep.
I wonder if he had been healthy and he hadn't stubbed his toe back in training camp, like, where would the Magic be right now if he had been playing, 41 games instead of 21? I think we would have won at least 5 to 6 more. So we would be at 500 or maybe 1 game above 500. We would be up there in the 7th, 6th seed conversation. Maybe not 4th, but really impressed with what we've seen from Markelle lately. What about you?
Yeah, to go from a point where we didn't have a point guard and we were sharing those duties between, Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, to now being able to have Markelle Fultz is so crucial to the Magic. It's the reason why we've been playing really good basketball. I'm not saying that he's perfect, and the Kings game is an example of the Magic not playing well, but in the last 10 games, Markelle's been averaging 12.4 points a game, 6 assists, 4.6 rebounds. So he's a playmaker, man, and he's a big point guard. He's able to get whatever shot he wants, and he has a good dribbling package. He finds a way to be crafty and being able to get into the lane. JJ Redick, described his game the best way. He plays awkward. He's an awkward player. The way that he runs, the way that he moves, and I don't mean awkward in a bad way. This is probably the only time I would ever use the word awkward as a compliment. There's nobody else like him in the NBA. And he finds a way to be able to get his team involved. And the fact that he's out there getting almost 5 rebounds as your point guard is big, because you need that type of support. You need that type of advantage that he is able to bring. His mid-range is lethal. The fact that there was a point, I can't remember what game it was, but there was a point where Markelle was going to the free throw line to during crunch time, and he knocked down both.
Yep.
This is somebody that people were pointing at and laughing at as a number 1 pick. You're a bust. You can't shoot. Look at his shot. It's ugly. It's awkward. And this is somebody that really found a home in Orlando. And I know there's so many people out there that are really hard on Markelle Fultz, and they don't believe that Markelle Fultz is the point guard of the future. I get everyone's concern with him not being able to hit 3-point shots. I get that, right? But he's not. I've said this a million times. There's one thing that he's not afraid to do, is he's not afraid to shoot the 3 ball. Now, he's not going out there and doing 5-6 attempts a game, but if he's open, he's going to take that shot. Whether he hesitates or not, he's going to take it. And I think that he's proved how valuable he is for the Orlando Magic, and I'm really excited to continue to see him be healthy and be able to keep pushing this forward, man, because he's a big piece of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we talked about it last week a little bit, like Cole Anthony being so inconsistent, unfortunately. This is what Markelle actually brings to the table. It's kind of some consistency. Yeah, he's not going to score 25 every night. He's not going to go and hit you a bunch of three-pointers, but he's going to lead this team. He's going to be a leader on the court. He's going to be a great point guard. You can depend on that every single night. And yeah, well, you talked about those big free throws he made against Portland. We were up 1. He stepped up and hit them both. In the crunch time, that helped us seal the win. Again, years ago, that would have been a known thing. He was going to miss those free throws. Markelle has worked a ton on his shot, free throws included. You can see it. I mean, his confidence is there. He's making shots when it matters.
Absolutely. And the Magic are getting healthier and healthier and healthier. And you're starting to see really what this team is capable of. And, speaking of healthy, it was announced that Jonathan Isaac was going to be able to join the Lakeland Magic in an official basketball capacity. And after missing 2.5 seasons, a total of 892 days, rehabilitating that left knee injury, we're finally able to see Jonathan Isaac play. And big shout outs to Bally Sports Florida and Son, who last minute was able to say, hey, we're going to be streaming this game on Bally Sports, and we're able to watch it. And, Jonathan Isaac, regardless of how you feel about J.I. from off the court, on the court, him not being able to play, whatever the case may be, it's a long time coming. And regardless of your feelings for J.I., there's a high likelihood that whether you don't like him, you like him, you're watching him play. And the fact that we were finally able to see him on the court, thank God, it was about damn time. We've waited a really, really long time for J.I. to play, and we got to a point where we went from really needing him to play, like we cannot survive without a Jonathan Isaac with Nikola and Evan Fournier and Aaron Gordon, to us saying, hey, we got Paolo Banchero. If J.I. plays, J.I. plays. If he doesn't, he doesn't. And if he does, it's a bonus. But I personally feel like this is a different type of bonus. My first instincts or my first opinion when I saw Jonathan Isaac check in, because he was on the minutes restrictions, as you can imagine, in the broadcast, he said about 15 minutes. He was playing the last 3-4 minutes of every quarter. When he checked in, this dude was a monster compared to everybody else. A monster. This dude looked like Goliath. One, I think that we can all kind of agree he's not 6'11". He's definitely a lot taller than that. 2, just his size, his mass. Like, the dude is a big dude. And maybe you're gonna have those people that say, well, of course, man, he's playing against G League players. I'm not talking about that, right? Because G League, not G League, these are professional athletes and they're all big. Jonathan Isaac was a mammoth. He was a man amongst boys, and not only did he look big, he played big, which was great. What were your thoughts on seeing J.I. for the first time?
I mean, first of all, really, really happy to see him play. I mean, you can leave politics out of this. You can leave anything personal opinions out of this. Just a basketball player. To see him on the court again. I mean, my last memory of J.I. was in the bubble. And I actually remember because I was invited by the Magic to be one of those virtual fans that were put on TVs, like on the arena. And I remember we're blowing out the Kings that game, playing so well. And all of a sudden, fourth quarter, we're up by 20-something points, and J.I. goes down. And I remember clearly just holding my head. I don't know if I made it on TV or not doing that, but I just couldn't move for about maybe 5 minutes. I couldn't believe this kid was playing so well, and that happened to him. But what reminds me, what I saw yesterday reminds me a lot of the way that he played in that game against the Kings. He was dominating. He was playing so well in the bubble. He showed the same flashes he showed last night. He was dunking, playing aggressive. And I'm like, wait, so this kid has not lost a step. He hasn't really missed a beat. He looks exactly like he did in the bubble, which was really impressive because he came out the same way, scoring quickly. His shot was going in, going to the hoop. not showing really a hesitation to put some weight on that knee. So that was really the most impressive thing to me, that he didn't seem scared. He was not wearing a knee brace. So those little things to me mean a lot. Now, performance-wise, 15 points, 5 rebounds, an assist, a block in only 14 minutes. Really, really good effort by J.I. yesterday. Now, we just found out today before we started recording, he's actually going to be playing tomorrow night in Lakeland, Saturday night. That's going to be really, really exciting to see how he bounces back, how his knee holds up to a second game now with Lakeland. And even better than that is, we're probably going to hear at some point, maybe Monday or Tuesday next week, is he going to play next Friday? So a big week for Magic fans.
It makes sense. Like
it does.
Okay, let's be honest. All right, he plays his second game with Lakeland. He's not going to play anymore. And Watch had already said that the prediction or the thought process is expectation is for him to play 2 games. So he plays those 2 games. Okay, what is he supposed to do from there? If we're talking about him being conditioning, what's the whole point of playing him 2 games in Lakeland to then not play him any more basketball for another month or 2? Like that, to me, that doesn't make any sense. What would make sense is you have him go out, play 2 games at Lakeland. Great. Get all those first game jitters out of the way, get your legs under you, and then bring you back to the big boys. Like that makes sense. It's an easy transition. The Magic will be back at home. There's a really strong possibility that Jonathan Isaac will be playing for the Orlando Magic at home January 20th, and Al will be hosting the Orlando Magic HQ podcast.
Hey, wouldn't that be something? Episode 1 of it, not really episode 1, but
we might have to. If that's what happens, we might have to keep it that way.
We may have to. Let's see what happens. But hey, what about this? I'm going back here and looking, and I think the last time that we recorded while J.I. was playing, and I'm going back to look here, it must have been episode 35 or 36. I can't quite pinpoint it right now, but it's either 35 or 36. It's been 105 episodes since J.I. played a basketball game for the Magic that we've done.
105.
Isn't that crazy? So with that being said, yes, if he does play here in January, as we talked about last week, I'll host a podcast, and hey, I'm gonna have to keep it that way, because if the new name is good luck for us, I'm all for it, man. I'll do it.
There you go. I mean, I feel like we saw a lot from Jonathan Isaac, from him doing some playmaking with RJ Hampton, from 2-handed dunks to trying to catch an alley attempt on his he tried my dude tried to dunk on somebody his very first possession in the game. 2-handed slams left and right, turnaround jumper. The only thing that had me a little concerned was that wide open miss that he had on that dunk. They said that post game with Dante that he got a little too excited. So we're gonna brush that one off based off of Russ, but there's a lot of things to look at and be excited about. Like the one thing that really stood out to me outside of the size was that he looked really aggressive out there, and it reminded me back to the bubble where we brought him back in, and he came in and he was looking for his offense. He was looking for his shot. And I saw the same thing here. And obviously that's what he's going to try and do, because it's a G League. But now I'm interested to see what that's going to look like when he returns.
I mean, really follow-up question for you. So I know for a fact that J.I. is not going to be in the starting lineup. If he does come back Friday, it's not going to happen. We know it's going to be a heavy minutes restriction. He's not going to play back-to-backs. We know all that. But question for you is, where does he fit in ever, even next year, in the starting lineup? Do you think the Magic go big in the sense of Markelle Fultz, Franz, Paolo, J.I., Wendell? That's kind of what the future holds, if J.I. is fully healthy here come next season.
I think that if J.I. can stay healthy, I think that he's going to play. My bet, if I was to put money on it, my money would be that he's going to play so good basketball, it would be impossible not to put him in the starting lineup. He's going to force his way there just because of his level of play. What's not going to happen is Franz is not going to get benched. Paolo Banchero is not going to get benched. So if you're looking to go traditional, right, I could see a world where maybe you put him at the 5. What if he takes over Wendell and Wendell comes off the bench? I don't see that like really physically happening, but I can see a world that it does. What if Wendell gets injured, right? Maybe he fills in minutes there. But we saw or we heard the comments. I can't remember who's a reporter. I think it was Fisher. I can't remember who. But it was that, you know, the Orlando Magic, they're the only, everyone talks about going positionless basketball, and the Magic are the only ones that are doing it. What type of message would it send if you did put Jonathan Isaac with Paolo Banchero, with Wendell, with Markelle, with Franz in the starting lineup? That this is the style of play. And it reminds me of the Magic going with Hito Turkoglu and Rashard Lewis, in the sense where the stretch 4 position was created by the Orlando Magic. We created that, right? And then everyone started finding their own stretch 4s. You know, the NBA turned into small ball. It turned into being able to put 2 guards together, 2 small guards together to you know, on a lineup. Why not? Why not try and see what happens? I want to see a lineup. Maybe not necessarily, you know, starting right away, but at some point I want to be able to see that lineup on the floor to see what ends up happening. Don't you think it would be a good idea to put your 5 best players in the starting lineup? I don't see. So if Jonathan Isaac doesn't start, then he's easily going to be your 6th man that comes into the game in the first, you know, 3-4 minutes. But I think that we're going to get to a point where he plays too good a basketball that you cannot not start him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think not right away. Let's clarify that. I think whether it's a few months down the road.
Yeah, not
I
right
don't
away.
know. I mean, the thing too is, do the Magic know more than we know? Meaning, has he been ready to play maybe heavier minutes than we know? He played 15 already, game 1 with Lakeland. Remember, Jalen Suggs last week, in his first game back, played 5, and that was his minutes restriction. So what does that say? We don't know. But I think we'll see him come off the bench for sure for maybe, we'll say maybe a few weeks, a month. And then after that, we'll maybe see some conversations about, hey, do we put him in the starting lineup? But it's going to be interesting, right? Because you got Cole Anthony saying, I should be a starter. Jalen Suggs was your 5th pick last year in the drafts. What do you do with him? It's a lot of dudes that you know that want to play, that eventually you have to make some decisions. But GI holds the cards. He's the highest paid player. He's a guy you've been investing in for 6 years now. If he comes back, stays healthy, and plays the way that we know he can, massive upgrade for us. Just on the defensive end alone. Think about that. Like how much of an upgrade for us that is.
Yeah, defensively, I'm looking forward to seeing Wendell and Jonathan Isaac like control the paint. Control the paint. Like I am all for that, especially because, you know, the one drawback that a lot of people have about Wendell is that, you know, for the most part, for your center, he's an undersized center. So to be able to have Jonathan Isaac kind of be his backup in a sense, where he's able to kind of like look over his shoulder and look out for him on, you know, on the weak side. I think that people are going to quickly forget about these 2.5 years. People are going to quickly forget about a lot of the things that people didn't like, you know, on the court, off the court. What I do like about this Jonathan Isaac is that it feels as if not only are we getting Jonathan Isaac, but we're getting like the veteran version of Jonathan Isaac. We're getting a little wiser, you know, basketball Jonathan Isaac, and I think that that's gonna go a long way for a team that we're short on vets, and I think that, you know, Jonathan Isaac still has a lot of growing to do, developing on the court and getting accustomed back to the game. But man, to be able to have another 7-footer on the team that can bring the ball down the court, that can handle the ball, that is massive and long and is able to do a lot of damage. It's gonna be crazy. I think that if in a wild world, if the Magic did make the plan, right? If we really did make the plan, The Magic would easily be the one team, in my opinion, that we're the wild card. Like, our record doesn't reflect our team because no one's been able to see our team fully healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And if any one of these teams are playing the Magic in a play-in, I would imagine that we wouldn't be like their number one choice to play against, just because we're the wild. You don't know what you're gonna get, and I think that's the part that's exciting, because the Magic do have an opportunity to really be scary on so many different levels. Because at that point, once we get into the play-in, we're looking at in a short period a way more wiser Paolo Banchero, a more polished Franz Wagner. Now Markelle is more deep into his game because he's had more games underneath him. Same with Jonathan Isaac. I think that, man, it's gonna be a problem if the Magic can continue playing this level and we can stay healthy. Things could turn around in a way where a lot of the tankers they're not going to be happy, and I'm okay with it.
I mean, you said it. We were 11-6 in our last 17 games. Now you're going to be bringing, adding back a guy like JI that's going to come in and at the beginning add strength off the bench, which right now is a weakness for us. For the last few games, we keep seeing that the starters do a great job. Bench comes in and the lead goes away. I think JI can help balance that off a little bit. But to me, he's a sneaky trade acquisition that you just got out of nowhere, right? Like, it's a guy that you picked up that you didn't have for the last 2 years that can come in and make a huge impact on your team. Again, not heavy minutes at first, but even those small minutes that he will play can have a huge impact on this team. So to your point, I think we're playing so well. And to say now, hey, we're getting healthier. Jalen Suggs is slowly getting back. J.I. is now coming back. I mean, the sky's the limit for this team. We've known that. And that's why it was so hard the first 17 games to see this team, or whatever it was, 21 games, see this team go 5-16, because we're like, wait, this is not what we expected. This is not what we knew we were going to get from this team. Now we're seeing it. We're getting healthy at the right time. And again, we have a ton of games left, man. We got 40 games left. There's a lot of basketball still to be played.
Yeah. So like that second unit. So a lot of times people were upset that you didn't have Paulo on the floor. You didn't have Franz. We had that second unit that didn't have those players. And you're kind of like, Most, what are we doing? I think that when you look at the second unit, you got Cole, you got Terrence Ross. Now you're throwing in, Jonathan Isaac. Now you're throwing in, Mo Wagner. You're hoping that Chuma eventually gets back. You're throwing that unit, and now that unit looks a little bit better than it did. Adding Jonathan Isaac immediately, even after not playing for 2.5 years, immediately upgrades your bench unit. And I think that when you look at Jonathan Isaac, you can tell that the instincts didn't fade. Dante Marcatelli even said this on while he was commentating, like, Jonathan Isaac was injured, but his shot wasn't injured. Like, this is somebody that was still putting in the work, at least in the upper body, to at least allow, that area of his game to be polished. Yeah, it may not be, game time type polish, but still out there going through the mechanics is really important. It's going to be crazy, man, because, there's a lot of doubters out there that are not expecting Jonathan Isaac to do anything. And I think that G League or not G League, at the very least, he went in there and he showed flashes. And I think that, that's the one thing that anybody wanted. I went in there with zero expectations. I just wanted him to end the game not sore, healthy, and he gave us way more than that. He definitely gave us a show.
For sure. And now, all the attention for me personally is on tomorrow's game. Want to see how he follows it up. But then also next week, I really, really hope that 20th, I think it is, against the Pelicans, that is the day he comes back. Because if that is the case, Amway is going to be rocking. We've been waiting for so long for this guy to come back. And not only that, but to be able to see, J.I. with Markelle again on the court. That was exciting. When we got the few games we got to see that was so exciting. And then you add to that now Franz, Wendell, Paolo, Cole Anthony. Like, it's going to be a fun team to watch. So I'm really, really hoping that it happens next week.
Yeah, so definitely let us know in the comments how you guys feel about Jonathan Isaac's first game back in Lakeland. If you're not watching on YouTube and you're listening to this in your car, whatever the case may be, send us a DM, man. We definitely want to know, because we've heard mixed emotions, mixed reactions. But exciting stuff. We'll see what ends up happening Saturday with Jonathan Isaac. And hopefully we get a chance to see him join the team soon. Our best guesstimate is going to be the 20th of January. That's our best guesstimate. I do want to bring back the conversation around Franz. Franz has been absolutely dominating, especially in the fourth quarter. The nickname is already coming out. Fourth quarter Franz. He scored the fifth most fourth quarter points in the NBA at 259. The only players that have scored more than him in the fourth quarter has been Giannis, DeMar DeRozan, LeBron, and Donovan Mitchell. Just recently, Bill Simmons in his podcast, they were talking about players that would be good fill-ins for the All-Star. And Bill Simmons is such a major fan of Franz Wagner. Like he is on the Franz Wagner hype train. They were even joking about, the fact that he'd be willing to trade Jason Tatum and a future pick for Franz Wagner, which I thought that was funny that they were teasing about him because he really likes Franz Wagner a lot. And one of the things that he talked about, he's like, man, listen, if we were to do a redraft, Mobley, in his opinion, would still go 1, but number 2 would be Franz Wagner. Like Franz would go number 2, not Cade Cunningham, not your boy Jalen Green, nothing. In his mind, it would be 1 Mobley, 2 Franz, followed by Giddey and whoever else. But Cade wasn't there until like maybe the 5th pick. And the fact that we're even talking about like legitimately redrafting Franz at 2, how could I not agree? One, I'm biased, so I'm definitely gonna go that route. But 2, he's been balling out, and you look at it as the Magic really won last year's draft and obviously killed this year's draft by doing what I consider a heist of the century. But what are your thoughts on that? The fact that people are still speaking so highly of Franz and his name is really being put out there the way that it is.
I mean, the first things first, when you talk about the fourth quarter scoring, and you mentioned Franz and the names, around Giannis, DeMar, LeBron, Mitchell, to hear his name mentioned around those names, it's just impressive in its own. I mean, to hear any Magic player for that matter being mentioned around those names, the last time we could maybe say that was, who? Maybe Dwight way back in the days?
Yep.
Vooch, I don't think even made it to that discussion. But that's really, really impressive to begin with. About the redraft, I would say, honestly, man, I like Mobley a lot. But looking at his numbers, I mean, I get it. He's playing a winning team. He's got Donovan Mitchell on his team now, 3 All-Stars in the team right now, possibly 4. So I think his individual numbers are now what they should be because, again, he's not getting as much attention on the offensive end of the floor. But I don't know. It's highly debatable whether I would take Franz 1 or Mobley 1 in that case. But I completely agree. I mean, unfortunately for Cade, he's been hurt this year, so we cannot really see what he can do on the court. We saw some of it last year. And Jalen Green is unfortunately developing into a scorer in a bad team. That's all we can say for him right now. He is athletic. He can drop points. He can do well. But he's not impacting winning in Houston so far. I think Franz has had more of an opportunity to have an impact on the Magic. And we've seen it. He's won games in the fourth quarters literally by himself, the way that he did it against Portland this past week. So really impressive. And to your point, if you ask me, we won this draft with Paolo. We won last year's draft with Franz. That's how you do a rebuild and do it right. So I think the Magic have hit 2 big home runs in the last 2 years draft. It makes me even more excited for what may happen this year, because if you have two at-bats again coming up to get a good player, they may hit a home run again and get a third really, really good player to add to this squad that we already have. It's crazy. But Franz, man, I cannot say enough good things about him. It's highly debatable right now. Who's my favorite player on the team? Is it Franz? Is it Paolo? Like who's my go-to, my number 1 option? It's hard for me to say. Either one. I like the fact they take turns. 1 quarter, kind of Paolo runs with the show. The next one is Franz doing it. It's working out great. But it's amazing, man. I really just hope that these 2 develop and continue to develop that chemistry on the court, because it is really hard in the NBA to have 2 talented young guys at the same time and that get along so well on the court. big things can happen for the Magic in the future if that continues.
Yeah, he's averaging over 20 points a game. Now we have two studs on the team, which is great. I feel like Bill Simmons he mentioned that he's watched way more Orlando Magic games than he expected to watch this year, which is great. If you don't know, Bill Simmons actually runs the Ringer. So the Ringer also just came out with their top 100 NBA player rankings. I feel like the Magic are starting to get a lot of love. Wendell Carter was ranked 83rd. Franz Wagner was ranked 69th. Paulo Banchero was ranked 62nd. When we look at the players that Franz Wagner was ahead of, we're looking at players like Tyrese Maxey. We're looking at players like excuse me. No, I apologize. I went backwards. We're looking at players like Cade Cunningham, Al Horford, DeAndre Ayton. We're looking at players like Scotty Barnes, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Kuzma. Like these are players that, last year we weren't saying these things, right? Paulo Banchero, another player that, he has a legitimate shot of, making it into the NBA All-Star game. Players that he's better than Marcus Smart, CJ McCollum, Tyrese Maxey. This is where we're at with the Magic, man. We're a team that is respected now. We're being talked about in high regards, and it's great now when we see the top 100 NBA players. We're not looking at it like, oh damn, where's the Magic player? Oh well, honorable mention Nikola Vucevic. Like we're not at that point anymore. So it's exciting, man. It's exciting to see the names on that list.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about like every week when the NBA does a Player of the Week announcements, you see that Paulo or Franz, they take turns being in that list. Player of the Month for the Eastern Conference, Paulo or Franz, always mentioned in there. Talking about the All-Star game now, Paulo, number 8 still amongst forwards in the Eastern Conference in the second return that just came out. So when you think about like the NBA is taking notice, like these two kids are really, really talented. And the crazy, crazy part is, man, these kids are 20 and 21 years old. Like the future is so bright. Both of them are just so mature. They play the game like they've been in the league for years, even though one is a rookie, one is a sophomore. That's the scary part. That if that's only getting started, imagine what they can be, a couple of years from now. It's incredible. But love the attention that we're getting, love the respect that we're getting. We also had Mark Spears from ESPN do an article on Paulo Banchero recently. So that attention, you can see it kind of from every angle coming in, articles, videos, respect in podcasts. It's been years. See, that can be said about the Magic. Even when we had, Vooch playing well and making the playoffs, that wasn't always the case. We were kind of a joke. Like, we'll make the playoffs, but we'll lose in the first round. We'll get swept. That was the message always. Right now, they can sense the vibe is different, that we're only getting started. And again, the future is really, really bright.
Yeah, Paulo Banchero remains number 1 in the NBA rookie ladder, which no surprise there. And he still remains at that 8th spot among forwards in the Eastern Conference. Is Paulo going to make the All-Star game?
I think so. If not by votes, of course, because I don't think he'll earn it because of that. I think some way, somehow, the coaches, the players, whatever it may be, are going to give this kid a chance to make it to the All-Star game. He deserves it. And if we continue to win some more games, I think that will also make a huge impact. We're doing well so far. We got to keep it going a few more weeks so he can lock it in. But I think we'll see him there.
Yeah. So a lot of unanswered questions. Bobo returned back from his health and protocol, but did not play. Is that just to give him some extra time? Is it to kind of see what most his rotations are right now? Did he fall out? Like, these are questions that we want to see answered when we face Utah tonight and then Denver on Sunday. RJ Hampton back with the Lakeland Magic. We saw him play with Jonathan Isaac, and then we also saw Mo Bamba kind of fall out of the rotation with Mo Wagner. Put in a lot of work for us. So I'm really interested to see kind of how this week plays out. After the game, at Utah and then Sunday, at Denver, the Magic have 4 days off. So another brutal stretch where there's really no Magic basketball happening. But you know what would be happening? Practices. practices that Jonathan Isaac can be a part of, which is exciting because it all falls in line. What a perfect opportunity to get him in the fold with those 4 days off to then join the team against the Pelicans.
That's a hope. That's a hope.
Yeah. So real quick, man, what are your thoughts on the Utah Denver? Do we steal that one against Denver? That's the one that I'm excited about, just because it's Aaron Gordon. He's been playing good basketball, but I want to see Paolo kind of go at him a little bit.
That's gonna be fun. I didn't think of that until now, but Paolo against AG is gonna be a fun matchup. A lot of fans were saying the last few games in December when Paolo was struggling, oh, he's turning into AG. So imagine when Paolo plays bad, he's turning into AG. That's the worst case scenario. I can take it.
What does AG turn into when he's playing bad?
Oh God. Yeah.
Scotty Barnes.
But I will say, I think we win one. I don't know which one. So I'm going to do the same thing I did last week when I said we either beat Portland or we beat the Kings. I think we win one of those two games coming up. I think it might be Utah, my preferred one. If not, I think we beat Denver. My only hope is that we win 3 games in this road trip. If we can end it with a 3-2 record, that's massive for us. Massive to come home. I think we have 5 games coming up at home, or 4 after this road trip, with a nice 4 days off in between, and possibly JI coming back. That's a perfect kind of setup there to end January, head into February, and the All-Star break. So exciting stuff coming up. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Nuggets are currently the number 1 team in the West. Are they number 1 team in NBA? No, it's Boston. But they're number West. They got their reigning MVP and the Joker. So it's gonna be fun, man. Again, the matchup with Aaron Gordon, that's what I'm most excited about. Just because the last time we played against him, Aaron Gordon he was being a little chippy, which I wasn't too fond of. If you remember, Aaron Gordon didn't have the friendliest of exits. So any chance we get to battle against him, man, it's going to be exciting. And, I'm hoping between the 2 games, I'm hoping we take that Denver game. That Denver game would be awesome. But if I'm a betting man, I'd say Utah for sure.
Yes, sir.
But man, a lot of things that we discussed. I didn't think we were going to get that full hour into this episode, but definitely a lot of topics. And man, we'll see what ends up happening. The very last episode of the OZone Podcast. Rest in peace to the Ozone. As we transition into the Orlando Magic HQ podcast.
Yes, sir. So next week, look for that.
Yeah. On that note, man, it's a wrap. Thank you guys for listening. Catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to the OZone Podcast, the voice of Magic fans. For all the latest Orlando Magic news and updates, follow us on Twitter at the Ozone Pod and on Instagram at Orlando Magic HQ. Remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on all your favorite podcast listening platforms.